This episode of the Daily Planet podcast is produced by Patron Cape Morning. To find out how you can produce your own episode of the show, check out patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms.
It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest, undertaking an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Planet podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and whatever else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I'm joined this week by my co-host and co-Earth champion, Matt Freeman. Matt, I would never miss a block for you.
Well, thank you, Scott. With the power of our teamwork, I'm sure that we can bring everyone a really good podcast today.
That's perfect, Matt. I agree. I completely agree. This week, we are talking about the 2015 action comedy film Lazer Team, spelled with a Z. And those of you out there that have seen the title and are tuning in are probably wondering why are we talking about a 2015 comedy action film now in February of 2018? Why are we doing that?
You want me to answer?
Yeah. You answer. You tell the people.
Yeah, well, that's because this is our very first episode under our new backer reward program. Those that have donated to us at the $20 level get the opportunity to pick a topic, any topic, as long as we approve it, and have us talk about it. This time, it was patron Cape Morning who selected Lazer Team. So here we are, ready to talk about this film.
Yeah. This is very excited. This is the first time we've done this. It's a cool thing that I think is going to get us to watch some things we would not have. But I think Cape Morning, I think specifically said here that he wanted us to get like as a way into Rooster Teeth, the company that produced this movie and has produced a bunch of stuff online, and we will get to them, and we will get to all that and our history with that website and that production company, and talk about the movie a little bit. But first, Matt, I think there's some breaking news.
This is Daily Planet News. I didn't like that.
Yes, it is time, Matt, for the news.
Okay, let's do it.
First up, the Han Solo trailer, Matt, is finally here. Well, I mean, not like now as we record, but like by the time everyone is listening to this podcast, the trailer will be live. It premieres on Good Morning America at 8:00 tomorrow morning, which is interesting because I don't know like the crossover of people that watch Good Morning America and Star Wars fans, but I guess they didn't want to show it at the Super Bowl for some reason, so they did Good Morning America the Monday after.
Yeah, they don't want to pollute the brand, I guess. I'd really rather talk about the Red Letter Media trailer review than talk about the Han Solo trailer, honestly.
Yeah, I am with you on that. That was very funny. And on that vein, since we don't know anything about it, I'm curious if you can take a guess about what we're going to see in this trailer, and then maybe next week we'll circle back around and see how right or wrong we were.
I mean, it's going to have Chewie in it. It's going to have the Millennium Falcon in it. They're going to try to show us that this is they're going to try to show us what the tone is, which I'm not sure what it's going to be now because they've changed it and they had to reshoot the whole movie.
Ron Howard says he's doing a gangster film.
Yeah.
I take that for whatever.
That's what I'm most curious about because, there's every Star Wars trailer begins with the same like music and like it shows like a sunset or something and stars and a spaceship, that's how it always is. And I'm wondering if they're going to if they're going to try to make it feel not like a space adventure, make it feel different by having it sort of tonally begin differently. That's my main question. Is this going to begin like every other Star Wars trailer, or is it going to be different because they're going for a different thing?
Yeah. I think I don't know. Like my whole thing on this movie is that it was trying to go for a different thing, and that's why they fired the previous directors. So I'm expecting everything you would think. We're probably going to see the Falcon doing the Kessel Run. That's probably going to be in the trailer. You're right. We'll see Chewie. We'll see Lando. I mean, it makes sense to show the cast, but I like there's going to be some callbacks to some Han Solo lines, of course, in the trailer to get everyone pumped about that. I don't. God, it's so hard to even pretend to be excited about this.
Yeah, I agree. It's confusing. As a complete relative aside, I had the Force Awakens on the TV, which my kids just had no interest in at all, despite the fact that they usually will watch whatever movie is on. And when Han shows up, I was like, "That's Han Solo," and they were like, "No, it's not," which I thought was pretty funny. And,
that's great.
And I tried to impress on them that this was the same actor who had gotten older, and they were just like, "Why do this?" It was pretty good. It was pretty great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What is aging, and why does it happen?
Yeah,
the eternal question.
Yeah, right. They were just nonplussed.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've heard that about The Last Jedi. I've heard that The Last Jedi is not as kid friendly. Kids are not getting into that film as much, but I didn't expect that with Force Awakens. But have they? Is this the first time they've seen it? I guess.
Yeah.
Or not seen it, rather.
Yeah, it was the first time. Well, they started watching it, and then they wandered away and started drawing or something, which is unusual for them. And I was surprised. I was like, "Wow,
yeah,
okay,
there you go, JJ. You failed."
Yeah, tough crowd.
Yeah. All right. The next piece of news is really the biggest thing that was circling around the film community, I guess, last week. This has to do with the sequel to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The sequel is called The Crimes of Grindelwald. Dumbledore in this movie, played by Jude Law, will, per the director, not explicitly be gay in the story. I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to get this to go down. I wanted an excuse to talk about J.K. Rowling and how she needs to stop it. It's basically what I wanted to do. But before we get into that, I'm curious about like what are you like? What's your opinion on this whole thing, Matt?
Well, initially, I guess my first opinion on her saying Dumbledore was gay seemed kind of pandering, because there's nothing overtly textual to suggest that he would be gay. So either she withheld that from the story out of cowardice, or she inserted that into her universe after publishing the story out of blatant desire to steal some kind of notoriety about it. Neither of which are positive motives for having this character be gay.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to how this is going to be handled in the movie, you know, it's not to keep calling back to Red Letter Media every 5 seconds, but it's on some level a calculated marketing decision, which is of course not admirable to not go that route.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also have further feelings, but what do you think first?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with doing things like this. They've added a thing extra textually to a story that wasn't in it. J.K. Rowling decided to make that decision, and it was 10 years ago. So the idea that you're declaring that a character in a universally loved child story is gay, even 10 years ago, was a pretty big deal. I mean, there were people at the time that were like, well, why didn't you just write him that way in the book then? But most people were just like, oh, that's cool, I guess. But you declare that, and then you decide to expand upon the universe. And more importantly, like, the relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald in this movie, based off of things that J.K. Rowling has said, his sexuality is important to it.
Right.
Like, Grindelwald is a bad guy, and the reason Dumbledore kind of gets involved with him is because of his sexuality. And and we haven't seen the movie, so we don't know, but to seemingly at the decision to kind of write that out or not just be upfront about it, to like pander to the widest possible audience is disappointing. But but I don't think J.K. Rowling should have said it in the first place. So I come back around again. I don't know.
This is probably strange because it's the first analogy I could think of, but it's like if several years after Lord of the Rings was popular, Tolkien was like, oh yes, Gandalf and Saruman are gay, and Gandalf loves Saruman romantically. You'd just be like, what? Like that? You didn't write it that way. You failed to get that across if that was your aim. And by the way, it changes a lot about how you interpret every scene that they're in and the motives of the characters. So you really either you have to reject it and be like, no, that's not actually in there, so I'm going to reject that. Or you have to be like, okay, well, I guess I have to go read the book differently now based on this completely extra textual. I'm not even going to call it information, because it's like there's death of the author, and then there's like haunting ghosts of the author trying to reinsert control over something that really it's not in there. It's just not.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why I think she just needs to stop. Like between this and her like outspoken defense of Johnny Depp, which was not a good look either. Like I feel like you and I have very complicated opinions of Harry Potter, but I feel like the Harry Potter franchise as a thing is looked upon worse now than it was when the movies wrapped up and everyone was still kind of in love with it. These things she's saying, for whatever reason, we can only speculate on what her reasons were to declare this information, but they're hurting the brand of the show, and I think she just needs to stop talking about Harry Potter. I really do.
I think you're right, but honestly, I think part of the reason why the brand is deteriorating is just that they're milking it too much, and that's completely separate from what she's saying. But I agree on both counts, I guess.
Yeah. It just feels like she said Dumbledore was gay when it was safe to, because it doesn't affect anything, and then the moment it starts to actually affect things, the franchise is like, well, I mean, like, it'll be implied and you could maybe read that into it, but no, we're not going to commit to it because that would be too controversial. Yeah, and it's like, you suck. Like, that's shitty.
Yeah. Did you mention that apparently she was like defending that as the right move? Is that true?
I haven't seen that. Okay. I know she like tweeted out like this really like sarcastic, like she was mad that she was getting mentioned on Twitter like all day, and she just started muting anyone that would mention her in it. And it's just like, again, that's not a great way to, I mean, if you're going to open yourself up to the fans like she has, and interact with them to drop information like this, then I worry about then just getting annoyed when you make a decision that they don't like. And it is your prerogative to respond or not to respond, but to be so blasé about it, I don't know. It's complicated. The author's interaction with fans is very complicated, and it's not something we've ever really had to deal with at this level in the world, because we've never had this much access to our authors. Yeah, right. I think a safe rule of thumb for authors is to just, not contradict what's in the text that you wrote. Yeah. And just let that conversation go. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer here. It is, I am disappointed. I mean, these were not going to be good movies, I don't think. The first one was not good. I didn't think this was going to be good, but at least you could go interesting, and you could, like, representation. You and I have talked about it on the Worm podcast many times, that representation matters. And having something like this in a movie would have mattered in a very distinct and important way. And it feels cowardly to try to go for that and then back off. And I think it's funny that like Beauty and the Beast did the same thing last year, and that upset people because they like triumphantly declared that the one of the characters was going to be gay, and then the movie, it was like, you could maybe read that into it. He makes one facial expression that you could interpret it. Yeah, it's like I don't think that's in there. Right, and they did that with Power Rangers too, that there was a character that was either gay or bisexual, one of the Power Rangers, but it just like, it's like they want to do it and they want to get the credit for it, but without ever committing to the thing. Yeah, it depends. It's going to be interesting what it actually looks like. I doubt I'll actually even see this movie, but if
if they strongly imply that Dumbledore's motives are romantic, then that might actually be fine. You know, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the other side of the coin. We don't want to make this like so overt lip service that it's like, look, we made him gay because that matters. Like you want him to be, you want his sexuality to be a defining part of him, yes, but not the whole defining part of him.
Yeah, and
I think that's the tightrope. And we've seen most of these movies err on the side of you got to be squinting really hard to see it.
Yeah.
But,
well, I would always just say, like, set aside sexuality. Just, is he in this or did he not go into this because he's in love with Grindelwald or not? And I think that's been at least hinted somewhere, that the reason he didn't get involved in stopping Grindelwald before he did was because he held him in too much fondness, and then Rowling kind of retconned it, in my opinion, by saying it was romantic. And it's like, okay, well, you can portray that in different ways, so we'll just have to see what they actually do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best way to end on this one.
Yeah. All
right, so moving on, Matt, the Directors Guild of America Awards happened this weekend, and the Oscar race is kind of starting to shape up, Matt. The likely winners are starting to come together because Guillermo del Toro took home the highest prize for his film The Shape of Water. It's great news for him. It was, I think I said it was my favorite film of the year, so I'm very happy it's getting all the success. I think we said a couple weeks ago it was the front runner for Best Picture. Now del Toro is officially the front runner for Best Director, because only 7 times since the Directors Guild Awards started have the directing award in the Oscars and this disagreed. Only 7 times since 1948. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I still haven't seen this movie, but my expectations are getting really high based on all this buzz.
I think you will very much like it. Yeah. It is a very different movie. It's one of those things, like I heard some people on Twitter calling it like the movie of the resistance, meaning the political resistance happening right now. And it is very much a movie about outcasts and mistreated people and them finding their strength and finding their voice. So I get that. But it's not in a way that's like very overtly political like The Post is, which is a movie I actually liked. But that movie's like allegory is thin deep. This movie is beautiful and clever and smart, and it gets across its message in a better way, I think.
Yeah, me too.
The other big announcement was, or award that night, was that Jordan Peele won the First Time Feature Director award for Get Out. So as much as it seems like Guillermo's got the director award locked up for the Oscars, I think Jordan Peele is nipping at his heels. And I think we're almost, Matt, in a spot where the Best Picture race might be between these two films, which is pretty crazy, because these are both genre films that I don't think anyone would have called them Oscar bait. And this is where we are now. Yeah,
well, that makes me happy. I haven't seen either of these, based on my understanding of them. They're the kind of movie that I enjoy, and the kinds of movies that tend to be focused on in the Oscars are usually movies that I'll think are okay, but then I kind of never go back to. So
yeah, makes sense.
I do need to watch both of these movies, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I think I have we'll talk offline. I think I can get you a code for Get Out.
Hooked up, all right.
All right, and finally, Matt, the Super Bowl starts in like an hour and a half.
All right.
And as some people know, I am a massive Eagles fan. I've been an Eagles fan my entire life. And I'm very excited because they are in the Super Bowl. And when everyone is listening to this, they will know what the result of the game is. And I don't. But I'm going to go ahead and be future-minded here and say, that was a hell of a game, Eagles. You fought your heart out, and insert result of game here.
Yeah.
I have never been more proud to be an Eagles fan.
Did you see that pass, Scott?
Yeah, like he caught it really good. It was a really good catch. I think
I recall an interception at one point.
That's bold. Maybe there won't be. Well, you don't know.
True. Well, maybe I ruined
the game.
Yeah.
Shit. Anyway, I'm excited. As soon as we finish up here, that's what I'm going to be spending the rest of my Sunday night doing. So it's going to be good. But first things first, Matt. It's time to talk about Lazer Team.
All right.
So before we get into Lazer Team specifically, I wanted to talk to you about Rooster Teeth and what your history with Rooster Teeth is. For those that don't know, Rooster Teeth is a Austin-based production company. They started with really just like machinima and web short videos. They're probably most well known for Red versus Blue and Ruby, I guess, which I've watched some Red versus Blue. I have not seen an episode of Ruby.
Yeah, people might not know what machinima is, but basically it's what so by example of Red versus Blue, they took the Halo video game and essentially used that as their studio. So all the characters in the game, all the settings are used. Or let me rephrase that. All of the characters and settings in the show are just characters and settings in the game that they're piloting around these computer characters, and then of course dubbing lines over them. And yeah, I watched the first probably 3 seasons of Red versus Blue. I don't remember. I try to go back through and remind myself, but this was actually many years ago that they first came out, and it's cool to see how far they've come since then. There've been so many seasons, and they've developed their technology further and further, and this whole art of machinima sounds really cool. And I always thought their show was pretty funny, so I was excited to watch this.
Yeah, I don't think I watched nearly as much of Red versus Blue as you did, but I did watch a fair amount of them. I was never a regular viewer. I think it started in 2003, so we probably watched some episodes of Red versus Blue together at some point.
Very likely.
Because we were in school. I can't believe it's on its 16th season, or 16th season is starting soon. It's still going, which is incredible. And yeah, they have blown up. They do podcasts. They are doing feature films. Obviously, they do other animated stuff outside of machinima. They're doing live action shorts, and I think they're making video games now. It's kind of like a success story that is very inspiring.
Yeah, I'm just skimming over their Wikipedia right now, and there's probably 100 distinct things that they're into, in terms of little projects and spin-offs and things. So yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I guess you could call them one of the pioneering groups behind this modern web world we live in, where many of the things that we love are actually, projects that are completely carried out by one or a small handful of individuals, and they're not really part of any particular giant conglomerate with top-down control.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who lives in Texas, I have applied to get a job there before when they have openings, and did not make it. But that was back in our early podcasting days, Matt, when I was just like, I know how to podcast. They need some podcast people. I can be funny. Let's do it. Didn't work out, but that's okay. I have been watching, as much as I'm not really into a lot of the things that they make, I have been watching their success and enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And it's great to see. And like I said, very inspiring.
Yeah.
So that takes us to 2015, and that takes us to Lazer Team. I believe this is their first live action feature length film. This premiered at Fantastic Fest, and I saw it at Fantastic Fest. I saw the premiere of this movie, not knowing it was even Rooster Teeth at first, because I don't really recognize any of the names because I don't follow them very much. But this was a movie that kind of surprised me, and I enjoyed getting to watch it again. And I want to hear what you thought of Lazer Team, spelled wrongly.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, honestly, my mind while watching it was completely preoccupied by the fact that this is a Rooster Teeth film that was made by money raised on Indiegogo and directed and starred in by people who, it seems like for the most part, we're not not professionals in the sense of not being from the system.
Right.
Certainly no one whose name you've heard.
I think only the guy who played Herman, the boots wearing one, whose name is Colton Dunn. I think he was the only of the 4 cast that were not or are not Rooster Teeth employees.
That's interesting because I kind of had him pegged as like a more standard comic actor, and not at all in a bad way. Like I was just like, this guy's doing a character, whereas everyone else is being funny and probably just acting like themselves being funny, which worked. That's not a criticism either. It worked really well for what it was. I definitely laughed a few times. Actually, I like this as a science fiction movie too, because like the idea of it and the twist, like I got the twist about 1 second before it's told to you, and I was like, I like that. That's good. I appreciate this idea.
Yeah, it is. Like this is very much a movie that is throwing back to the 1980s and the 80s sci-fi type stories, but it's doing it in a way that doesn't feel derivative to me. One of the biggest things that jumped out at me while I was watching this movie was comparing it to Pixels, which also came out in 2015, which is the Adam Sandler 80s video games are great movie. And that movie felt like specifically trying to use 80s nostalgia to make some money, whereas this was hitting all the same like emotional and thematic type stuff that you would see in like a 1980s science fiction type story, but doing it from the perspective of let's tell something a little bit new and interesting and have fun with it. And that's what I appreciated in this movie.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of The Last Starfighter, in terms of the visual aesthetic, just going for this kind of retro look. Everything is all smooth plastic, and then like the alien who they have to fight is sort of I don't want to say like a bad puppet, but like it has that intentionally lumpy quality that you kind of want to see from like a old fashioned alien villain.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is so. It's so hard to talk about comedy movies sometimes because I feel like the thing that I want to do is just repeat all the jokes that I thought were funny. But I think the humor in this worked for me a lot because it's all very subtle a lot of the times. Like there's funny lines, but it feels different from a lot. And that's like that. I think that goes back to the 80s thing as well, is it feels like a different kind of humor than the comedies we're seeing these days. A lot of the jokes there's not a lot of attention drawn to them. They're just kind of thrown out there. I really liked how the helmet guy, Woody, started talking British. Yeah. And then they point out it's because he's stupid and that's what he thinks smart people sound like. So that's what he's going to talk like. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the action, a lot of the action comedy worked really well. Like they set up what the stealth mode does. And then the stealth mode comes into play later when the one guy's hiding and everybody else can't use their weapons. And you're like, oh, I appreciate that this was correctly, like it was competently done it was competently done in terms of humor, competently done in terms of action, and the two were blended very well.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you look at the bones of this movie, it's very well constructed. It is not, it feels weird to call it like a minor film. Like this is not a movie that's going to change anyone's life, but it was just very well constructed. It was very well put together. Yeah. It's kind of amazing on the budget they had that the CGI looks as good as it does. There's some issues with it, but it's not movie breaking at all.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, it's kind of a boner comedy, right? It's not Shakespeare. Yeah. So it's fun. It's weird to talk about because it was never going to be like, oh, this movie was amazing. Because it's like, no, it's not trying to really be amazing. It works really well at hitting the target that it was aiming at. And I think it's about as highly as you can praise it. And I think that's true.
Yeah, and I think so. I just realized that we never really summed up what the plot of the movie is, and we're 10 minutes into talking about it. So people that haven't seen it, if they're listening, have no idea what we're talking about. But so the basic premise of this movie is there is this super suit that was given by some aliens to protect us against other aliens, and it crashes here on Earth, and 4 idiots collect it individually instead of letting the man who was selected from birth and trained his entire life to wear the suit, and hilariousness ensues because they are dummies that are useless, basically.
Yeah, most of the comedy comes from those 4 characters and their pre-existing relationships and interactions. Yeah,
because Hagen, the traffic cop, was a football player along with Herman, played by Colton Dunn, and they have some issues. That was the joke we made at the beginning of the podcast, where Hagen missed a block and his buddy's leg got injured and ruined his life, so they hate each other from the beginning. And then the youngest person is dating Hagen's daughter, so there's some fun situation comedy stuff from that. And Woody's he's the one that's just kind of there. There's always like in these ensemble movies, there's always kind of like the goofy one that's just kind of there.
He's kind of the
and
Egon.
Has no real he has no real specific conflict in the film at all. He's just there and useful at times and funny at times.
Yeah, right. I mean, he is the comic relief in this comedy movie, I suppose.
Yeah. It is interesting though. Like, I think the most interesting character to me was Adam, who is the guy who plays the kid who was the Earth's champion, who was born and selected and bred his entire life to wear the suit and defeat the bad guy at the end. And he finds that things have gone wrong now. The pieces have attached themselves to these four guys and they cannot come off. So his entire purpose is stripped away from him. And I enjoyed that the movie took the time to really let that angle of it play out, that he has his own little arc where he's like learning how to exist and how to matter when the only thing he was ever supposed to do has been stripped away from him.
Yeah, I thought that was, I agree completely. I liked that they gave that room to breathe and they would actually cut away from what the other guys were doing and cut to this guy. And his story is actually much more serious and he's really struggling with this, and it brings a little bit more gravitas to this story, because like my problem with a lot of these boner movies is like, it's one reason I never could really get that into Super Troopers is they're like nothing matters. Like it's almost nihilistic how casual they are with everything. There's no stakes, and it's like, well, it's a silly comedy. What do you want? And it's like, no, this movie shows that you can do a silly comedy, and you can have just like one character get maybe 2 or 3 scenes to establish stakes and a little bit of gravitas and pathos, and then work that into the ending so that you actually feel something other than like amused detachment, and it all works really well. Yeah,
and I actually lump Monty Python into that as well, because like I love Monty Python and I think they're really funny, but they don't care about story at all. They're going to do whatever makes the funniest joke. And that, I mean, Monty Python and the Holy Grail ends on a joke, basically, where it says, hey, everything that you've done so far is immaterial and stupid. Let's just end this on the funniest possible joke, which is great for comedy. But yeah, when I watch a movie, I like story. So I wish some of the comedies I watch would spend more time on that story. And pathos is absolutely right. Like you said, are we doing spoilers on this? I don't think we've decided that or not.
Maybe we should just pull away from it, since we've almost got through this whole discussion without any, but we could have a spoiler section, I guess.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is pathos. There is tragedy that happens in the story, and it is very silly throughout mostly, but these characters are people, and we get to know them as people and not just what would be the funniest thing for this person to do in this moment. Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm gesturing at when I say competent. Like, they got the characters right. The actors portrayed the characters well. The story flows well. It's funny where it's trying to be funny. It affects you emotionally where it's trying to affect you emotionally. And there's a lot of clever moments, like the telepathic bond moment. I thought that was kind of, I was like, okay, I didn't see this coming. Oh my God. That was like I liked that, because sometimes I like making sure that I'm not too adult to just appreciate like stupid, gross out humor. Right. That's just like specifically like sexual and ridiculous. But that scene, and the people that have seen this movie know exactly which scene we're talking about, with the 4 of them hanging out inside Woody's mind space, is so funny. Yeah. That's probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. And like during that whole thing, he's explaining how the dark matter ray works, which is a thing that comes back to be extremely important at the end of the movie, and they miss it all.
Yeah, right. No, I forgot that was true because I think I was also distracted. But yeah, that's a funny way of conveying the info dump in a comedic scene where you don't notice it. So
yeah, I mean, so I think we're being pretty positive so far, and I think that's because we both enjoyed the film. But again, this is again, the word slight seems weird to say, but I think that's what it is. It's like, this is just this hour and a half of entertainment, and then you kind of just forget about it. Because I saw this movie before I watched it again yesterday, and I did not remember a lot of the things that happen in this movie.
Yeah.
Just because it's not something it's not going to change your life. It's not something that sticks in your head. It's just pretty fun for like 90 minutes and then over.
Yeah, I was glancing around. I think it's got like 3 out of 5 stars on IMDb, I think, and it's got a fairly low Rotten Tomatoes score. And that's the thing, is like, if you're ranking this in terms of Hollywood movies, it's going to fall pretty low in the ranking. But like, it's not. I've also seen much worse Hollywood movies than this.
Oh yeah.
So it's that's the thing, is competent can be a backhanded compliment too, because you're not saying it's great, you're saying it didn't make any obvious mistakes. But that's my, like, that's why I want to give it credit. Is I get kind of sick of like reading books and watching movies that do contain obvious avoidable mistakes as I see them, like where you as just a viewer or reader are like, you could have made this better by just not making this choice, and I can explain exactly why. This movie didn't really have any of those because it was well put together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some moments where I kind of groaned a little bit. Like, some of the comedy, I think, falls flat. I'm thinking of basically everything that happens in his ex-wife's cabin.
Yeah,
I just like could have used getting completely rid of all that.
That did seem to go a little bit long.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the thing about this that separates it from some of those more lifeless but more expensive Hollywood attempts to do something like this is, you can tell that to the guys at Rooster Teeth, this was important to them. This was their starting statement as a studio that makes full-length feature films. They put their heart in this story and this film, and I think that's where you leave it not really wanting to say something bad about it, because yeah, it's not the best movie in the world, but it has their heart. You can see the work they put into this to make a great opening statement on, we're here and we want to be taken seriously with our dumb comedy movies.
Yeah. It was very much in line with what I think of as the Rooster Teeth brand in that way.
Yeah, and as someone who's watched a very minimal amount of Red versus Blue, I did recognize a lot of how the comedy works, the comedy elements. Like, I think that show is very, very dialogue focused, right? Because it's really just machinima. Like, while I think they found really creative things to do with it, it's still a pretty limiting way of writing comedy. And I think that showed in how clever at times the writing in Lazer Team was.
Yeah, well, and I think this was so, like, I don't know how many, again, probably 3 seasons of Red versus Blue, but my overwhelming impression of it was that I would just kind of have like a mild smile on my face for the entire episode, but never actually laugh. And that's a certain style of comedy, like you said. This movie, I actually laughed pretty good a couple times, which is, good for when you're watching a movie by yourself, and the part of your brain that makes you laugh is sort of less activated. But like you said, it's still the same general style of fast-paced quippiness, where the movie doesn't linger on any particular quip for too long.
Man, so I've got the Wikipedia page open, as I always do, and I just happened to notice a RogerEbert.com review quote of this film. And it is basically saying the exact opposite of what you and I are saying. This movie is, in essence, a product of fame and money without the slightest tangible shred of effort. And I strongly disagree with that.
Yeah, That's a odd thing to say. I don't think I agree. I don't think I agree with that at all. Like, what does that even mean? Everyone's obviously trying. It wasn't high art, but...
And to call it a product of fame and money, considering it was funded... Like, I mean, I guess you could argue that because it was funded through Indiegogo, like, the only reason they got the money to do this is because they were popular, but that's, like, I don't know.
Scott, here's my review of Shape of Water, which I haven't seen. It was a product of fame and money.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, any movie that gets created is created because famous people were involved and there was enough money.
Right. Especially any big name director, which these people are not, so I don't understand. But that's Ebert.
Yeah, I mean, like,
come on.
I mean, that's not actually, that's RogerEbert.com. It's not Ebert himself. Okay. It's Matt Fagerholm, I think is his name.
Well, now Daily Planet has a vendetta against Matt Fagerholm.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
A product of fame when you're internet famous is an interesting statement to me. I don't quite understand that. Like, everyone knows internet famous is not the same thing as...
That smacks to me of a certain kind of sour grapes, honestly.
Yeah. So I am curious. A Lazer Team 2 exists. It came out last year. I have not seen it. Would you, after seeing this movie, would you like volunteer to see the movie? Would you say, yeah, I'll check that out?
I'll probably look and see if it's got worse or better scores than this one first, and if it's the same or better, I might actually check it out. Mainly out of a sort of intellectual curiosity about the Rooster Teeth enterprise and appreciation for the fact that they've done this thing that they're doing, where they're kind of just off to the side doing their own thing. If it's worse, if it seems like it's worse, I'm probably just going to pass.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where I start to worry, because they had this idea and they worked hard on this idea. Apparently the idea for this movie came in 2010 and it took them 5 years to get it from just an idea in their heads to actually out on the screen. So now they come back 2 years later with another thing that's just, hey, that was popular. How about we do it again? Like, it's the sequelitis,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have high expectations, but I'll probably glance over and see what the reviews say.
Yeah, I think that's probably as well. Both of these movies, by the way, were eventually distributed by YouTube Red, which is YouTube's streaming service that I don't have. I don't know if you do.
No, although it would make sense for me to have it, but no, I don't.
So if we had that, we could see them presumably for free, I would think. I don't know. I don't know how YouTube Red works.
Maybe I'll just get that. It seems like a worthy thing to do. Yeah, I'll probably do that.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Lazer Team? I don't know if there's much more to talk about here. I liked it more than I remember liking it the first time I saw it, which is unexpected, but
yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was.
Right. That's what I would say. Like, I was thinking, like, would I recommend it? And I'm just like, well, if you tend to like silly boner comedy movies, then sure. But it's not.
I would never. Yeah. I would probably never go out and say, "Oh, you got to watch Lazer Team right now." But if someone was like trying to find a movie to watch and they said, "Hey, I see this Lazer Team. Would you watch it?" I'd be like, "Yeah, give it a shot."
Yeah, I guess what my final just comment would be that I am impressed with how this movie looks and how professional it seems when it was basically crowdfunded. That's the cool thing about it. Like, if you want a sales pitch, it's like watch a really well done movie on a shoestring crowdfunded budget. This is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I also like that they wrote why it's spelled Lazer Team wrong, because that was funny.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember the first thing I saw was they spelled laser wrong. Why do they do that? And then the movie answers that question.
Yeah.
So good job, movie.
Yeah. Didn't miss a stitch.
All right. That is Lazer Team. Thank you, Cape Morning, for having us watch that film. I hope we have made you proud in our discussion of it. Let's then move on, Matt, to what we have been watching.
have you been watching? What have I been watching? Well, I asked you first, so you better tell me.
And why don't you go first?
So I read The Magicians like 5 or 6 years ago or something, and I actually really liked it, but for whatever reason didn't feel compelled to read the sequels. And that was a mistake, because in this last week or two I've read the second book and about 80% of the third book. I'm almost done with it. And this is a series of books that you're making a mistake if you only read the first book, I think, because a lot of like the typical complaint about The Magicians, the first book, is that the main character is a whiny piece of shit, which he is. And
yes.
And I'm not going to go into spoilers, but like the point of this series is his character development over these 3 books. They like if you're taking it as like, I didn't like the character in the first book, so I don't like these books. You weren't supposed to like the character in the first book. And the second book, I'm not going to say whether the second book is roughly the same in terms of quality. The third book I'm actually enjoying much more than either of the previous 2, just as entertainment value. And I really appreciate the themes that have kind of emerged over the course of the story, which it's obvious they were there the whole time. It's obvious they were there in the first book too, but it wasn't clear the direction things are going to go without seeing how this character evolves and how all the underlying parts of the story evolve and how all the other characters develop. And now it is. And I haven't finished the whole thing yet, but I'm fairly confident I'll enjoy how it ends. And
yeah.
I actually always liked The Magicians, despite the whiny main character, but now I'm actually a little bit like saddened that it has the reputation that it does, because it's the point of that book was to set up this trilogy. So
yeah, that's interesting. I guess this whole reread, or not reread, but the read of the 2 books was kind of initiated by me having finished the first book, which is something I think you were telling me to read for a while, and Michael specifically told me not to read, which for me is basically means I have to do it.
Yeah.
I have to. And I finally got around to it in January of reading this book, and we were talking about it, and then I put the next 2 books on my list to get to eventually, and you inspired me to kind of bump those up. So I have not started them yet, but I really would like one day down the road, once I've finished both these books, for you and I to just sit down for like an hour on air and just talk about this series. Because I think there's like just from what I've seen in the first book, I have a lot of things I want to talk about, and I don't want to do them here because people haven't read them and we might spoil it. But from what I'm hearing from you, there's going to be even more to talk about by the time we get around to the end of the third one. So let's put that on the calendar, Matt, and let's do that, because I think that'll be fun.
I'll look forward to that.
Cool.
Have you read anything cool recently or watched anything?
I am watching Cheers, Matt. The 80s, or was it 80s? Did it come? I think it was early 80s sitcom Cheers with good old Ted Danson.
That's interesting, because it's been on TV pretty much since then, so it's hard to know when it actually came out in the first place.
I know. And it's one of those things that I think, like Red versus Blue, over the course of my life, I've probably watched a handful of episodes of Cheers, but I never really sat down to just watch the series from start to finish. And I had been watching Frasier on Netflix. I went through Frasier from the first episode to the end. It's kind of like my fall asleep at night show. And I finished that and was like, what now? And I was like, well Frasier wasn't Cheers. so I just started watching Cheers. And I am shocked at how, I guess shocked is the wrong word. Clearly it's good, but I am enjoying the show way more than I really thought I would, because like you hear, like we've seen so many 30-minute sitcoms that have the laugh track and the kind of corny dumb jokes. We've seen those so much, and I'm only through the first season now, and I love this show so much. It's so well done. Yes, there's the corny laugh track jokes, those do exist here, but these characters feel real, and the show like really explores who they are and the difficult things they're going through. Like, I forgot that Sam, Ted Danson's character, was an alcoholic owning a bar. And there's a whole episode of him really almost coming to temptation. And it's this really warm-hearted but challenging episode in this silly sitcom. And Cheers is great, guys. Like, it's really good, and I can't wait to see more of it. I know that, like, halfway through it, Shelley Duvall leaves and the series really shifts and changes a little bit, but I'm excited to experience that, and I'm excited to finish my run of Cheers.
Cool. Yeah, like you, I've probably seen a smattering of episodes over the course of my life, and it sounds like the most boring premise in the world, but I believe you because it's like popular and very long-lived.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And it was like in the back of my head because I bought this book about the 100 greatest television shows of all time, and I was reading there, and they have Cheers very high up on that list, and I was like, really? Cheers? I mean, I know it's like nostalgically loved, but was it really like a quality television show? And then they put Simpsons as their number one, so I was like, okay, these people know what they're talking about.
Right. Their radar is well calibrated, so that's cool.
So
I didn't know that it was that well regarded, so that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Cheers, if you want to watch it, by the way, all on Netflix, everyone. So the whole show is on Netflix for who knows how long. They'll probably take it off at some point. Hopefully not halfway through my watch.
Yeah, right.
All right, that is all we had for you guys this week. If you have any questions or comments or just want to say hey, you can reach out to us via email. That's dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com or on Twitter @dailyplanetfilms. That's DALY. We try to respond to just about every message we get, so feel free to contact us. We like hearing from you guys.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else that you can find podcasts. We really appreciate those of you who've gone over to the YouTube channel to subscribe. That really helps us a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for that. And we have tons of great content here, and we have more shows, more ideas, more things coming out every day. So you can find all of this stuff at dailyplanetfilms.com if you're ever curious about what we're doing, what our new shows are. Even if they aren't on this feed that you're hopefully subscribed to, you can find that stuff there. And if you like what we do here and you want to support us, consider becoming a patron of the Daily Planet. You can pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we're growing and we're improving and making new content. This entire episode, guys, only exists because Cape Morning was nice enough to donate at that Kryptonian level. So you too can make us watch whatever you want us to. Even anime. even anime. I was shocked. I know Cape Morning talks in the Discord a fair amount, and I was kind of shocked he let me off with an easy one the first time around. He didn't go straight to anime. I feel like he's building up to it.
Yeah, they're lulling you into a false sense of security.
Yeah. So if that all sounds interesting to you, you can head on over to patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms and check us out.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content we make here.
Yeah, and that's it for this week. Next week on the Daily Planet podcast, Matt and I will be back right here for a special episode that I'm pretty excited about, Matt. We're going to talk about film content on YouTube. We're going to talk about film criticism, film theory, film analysis, and video essays, and the parts of it that we think are great, why we think that this is really like a golden age for this kind of stuff, and what our favorite content creators are, and maybe some of the worst examples of what this medium can be. I think I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, we're wading into the current drama surrounding this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so thanks again, Matt, and thank you, Cape Morning, for Lazer Team, and we will see you guys next week.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday. There'll be